It's a great honor to be here. My name is Zsolt Balla. I'm the federal military rabbi for the German Armed Forces. I was born and raised in Budapest, and for the past 22 years been living in Germany. And as of 2021, I serve as the federal military rabbi. To give a little context of how this is, actually the military rabbinate in Germany is quite new. June 2021 is our birth month. But the truth to be told, actually the German Jewish community has been pursuing the idea of having a military rabbinate for, I believe, close to 30 years, if not more. There was a certain historical reflex in Germany that Jews did not go to the military. Obviously, it was not forbidden. Not only that, in West Germany there was a mandatory army service, but the way the law was formulated is if somebody was a prisoner of war in World War II, is for 2 generations from mandatory service exempt. Put this in context, my mother, who was born in 1942 in Budapest, that would make me a first generation after the Shoah, and even my son, who is now 8 years old, and assuming that in 10 years he would be eligible for a mandatory service, would be still exempt on the basis of the fact that somebody who was persecuted during the Shoah is considered to be a prisoner of war. So this way, the Jewish community for many, many decades have not been really involved. Nobody really went into the Bundeswehr, and just also for the context, the word Bundeswehr means actually federal defense. They wanted to make sure that they break any kind of ties to the Wehrmacht in 1955 after 9 years of demilitarization in Germany. However, for the Jewish community, it was very, very hard to look at the situation as not a continuation. At the same time, we see times have changed. I'll be very honest with you. I've been contemplating on the fact that how did a Hungarian-born Jewish guy ended up in a position, this really highly politicized position? And probably this is the answer. The fact that I do not have the same historical reflexes as somebody has been brought up in Germany. Maybe this is something that really helps me to look at the context, as we say, beautiful Hebrew, ba'asher hu sham, the way it is right now, and not carry with me the package of the past decades. And I find it very, very inspiring. The soldiers, especially in the general staff, their view on the world, the way the German military today, unequivocally standing by the side of Israel. I just mentioned this. I really hope that he would agree when I say that the commander of the Air Force, Lieutenant General Ingo Gerhartz, 2 weeks into the Gaza war, he gives me a call and says, listen, we Jewish chaplains, and not just Jewish chaplains, actually the Christian chaplains, in the German military, we are considered to be civilians within the system. And he did not get the clearance to take with me along for a short visit to Tel Aviv, but he asked me over the phone, do you think it's a good idea that our group, we're speaking about 10 soldiers who go and visit the Jordanian outposts of the United Nations missions in Germany, they go to Tel Aviv, and they go to the Tel Shomer hospital, and they're going to donate blood. Now, do I think it's a good idea? Keep on thinking to myself, if somebody told this to my grandparents 80 years ago, that they will come when a 3-star general, the commander of the Luftwaffe, let's not say German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, will come to Tel Aviv, to a Jewish hospital, to a free Jewish state, in order to show his solidarity to a democratic state and a democratic, ethical, morally very, very well-funded, free Jewish military, probably they would have said, you're out of your mind. But this is reality. So I feel it's really important to mention that. I feel privileged in my role. It's not me. It's literally the circumstances, and I got this great gift from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, from Hashem, that I have the ability to serve in this capacity, and really the goal is very, very simple, just very one line, Mekadesh Shem Shamayim, to sanctify His holy name, to show the world that we Jews have actually a lot to offer in ethics, in morality. And thank God, there are Jewish soldiers, by the way, let's go back also a little bit to the military, also during these years leading up from 1957 till 2020, 21, there were Jewish soldiers. There were always those who said, we want to serve, we want to show our best. There was also even a colonel and a general staff. We have veterans who've been to Afghanistan, who've been to Mali, who've been to the different UN missions on the Mediterranean. Right now, I'm so proud to say, the first Jewish military chaplain, last week, Monday, shipped out in Norway in the North Sea, the first time that a chaplain on active duty is actually accompanying a German unit outside Germany.
That's incredible.
And as the main chaplain in that contingent. It's just...
So the main chaplain of Jews, non-Jews.
That's right, that's right.
Yes. In the German military.
That's right. A chaplain is a chaplain. And I believe this is also the same thing here. And this is a normalcy. We are there to help people, no matter who turns to us. We have just simply our ethical and moral education from Judaism, which is, I really believe, I hope I can safely say that without and diminishing any other faith groups, but I really believe that, especially in Germany, where we say that the German army stands for what you call LVB, for Landesverteidigung und Bundesverteidigung, the protection of the land and the protection of our allies. What could be more compatible with that than the Jewish ideas on warfare, the Jewish ethics on warfare, the way it's delineated in the writings of the Maimonides and the way it's detailed in the Talmud? It's just simply what we are. We're not going out to conquer other lands. This is not the idea. We protect our people wherever we are, and we protect our allies who are there in order to set really a course for the world for free democracy. So I really find this astonishing and beautiful that today Germany is on that side. Now, all that said, we have to acknowledge the following fact, and this holds true for, I really believe, for every military in the world where people are not serving and as a mandatory service. People who willingly come to be part of the military generally are leaning towards the right spectrum of politics. It's inevitable that there will be people who are representing extremists and no-go ideas. As long as we acknowledge that and we say, guys, we have a problem, we have to have countermeasures, we have to be part of the system to counterbalance these evil ideologies. As long as we speak about this clearly and we do not want to sweep them under the rug, we have a place in the military. And this, not only that, it's our imperative that we participate and acknowledge that we need to do our share as well as Jewish citizens. It should not be a blind patriotism. It's very, very important. We should not be blind patriots. But there's one single core value in Judaism, which is hakaras hatov, the recognition of what the other party does for me. The fact that we can live in a free democracy obligates us to do our share, not blindly, always representing our Jewish ideas, what Judaism has to say. But I really believe that we have what to do, not in the German military, but wherever Jewish people live in a free democracy in their respective military.
So the German military is doesn't hide their past, but rather holds it as a torch of realization and of knowledge of ensuring that there needs to be safeguards. Is that what you're trying to?
I would say it differently. The German military is not a continuation of what was before the Shoah and during the Shoah. The German military wanted to be a very, very clear cut.
And so the Shoah is the Holocaust.
That's right. Sorry. Yes. So this German army has a different name. The army. Sorry. Very often in Germany, when we use the word army also for military. The German military is not the same German military as was before and during the Holocaust. There was a 9-year gap between 1946 and 1955, the years of demilitarization, and when they reestablished in West Germany, the Bundeswehr, the federal defense, they did everything in their power to implement countermeasures already at the beginning that the misuse of the military cannot happen again. The two main important countermeasures in there is that the chaplaincy, and this is the reason why I do not carry a military rank, the chaplaincy will be a civilian service within the army. We're part of the system, but we're not part of the chain of command. Why? In order to make sure that you can speak on an eye level to a general and to a private. Doesn't matter. You have your religious integrity to represent. And that's what you do. This is the reason why we are not part of the chain of command. But at the same time, again, the rabbi who is now on the sea, he has the same uniform as the others. However, we do not call it uniform; we call it protective clothing.
Right.
But it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And here on the shoulder, he wears and our future chaplains, they will wear the beautiful insignia of the military rabbinate, the two tablets of the 10 Commandments, and the Star of David. And this is, I really believe, it's a proud sign. And now, thank God, we see this. This has become really an international sign. American, Canadian, Belgian, Dutch, German, Israeli military rabbinates. It's a very, very clear sign what we stand for, what our core values are. It's embedded in the Torah and the 10 Commandments. That has also somewhat this universal notion. But however, we know that this is really the core values is how it's delineated in the 5 books of Moses. Now, the German military is not a continuation of what was before. It's inevitable that there were, in the beginning, some structures that had been used, but they want to make clear cut. So because of that, they instituted the Center for Inner Leadership in the German army, which is a whole unit kind of on the side, overseeing all the ethical measures in the whole army. Every soldier in the army has to have a certain amount of hours in a month that they have to have ethical and political education. It's incredibly important. We want soldiers to know what is democracy. What are they fighting for? This is really not just a nice idea. This is not just you sign on once on a paper. No, this is something that each unit, they could do it in a bulk. It's not a problem that they do, let's say, one intensive day in 4 months instead of having a shorter class in
But the idea
month.
is to ensure that ethics are at the heart of the military.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is I really believe this is something very unique in the German army.
I find that also very intriguing how you mentioned that they specifically had the chaplains corps outside of the military,
Right.
and in a civilian service to be able to talk eye to eye,
That's
which shows a respect of religion.
That's right.
And of fear of God, which
Yes.
is so important, which wasn't in the previous
It is
generation.
true. At the same time, I have to say that this is a struggle. No, I wouldn't say struggle, but it's definitely a subject. I really believe that sometimes it's so we're not just not even carrier of ranks, but we own most of the chaplains wear their protective clothing only if they are not in Germany. So that makes us a little bit outsiders. So I think really to wear the same uniform as the soldiers gives somewhat more of a feeling of connectedness, which I really believe the chaplains do need to feel. But again, we have certain traditions in Germany. We have approximately 200 Christian chaplains, 120 Lutherans, and 80 Catholics. Plus now we have this quota of 10 Jewish chaplains. So far we have 5 positions filled in Germany and 5 vacant. But again, you could ask, how come probably you have a very small amount of Jewish soldiers, and which is true. Again, I officially am not even permitted to say numbers, but the truth is, Baruch Hashem, thank God, there are Jewish soldiers. They're really excellent fellows in different branches in Germany. At the same time, as I told you, this ethical and political education, especially the ethical part, is done by the chaplains. That means our Jewish chaplains, day after day, they have the chance to meet non-Jewish soldiers, and they're often the first Jewish person they have ever seen in their lives. It's a great possibility to encounter, and I really believe, if you were to ask me, again, we're not there to combat anti-Semitism. And whenever you need to combat against anything, it means it's usually you're on the wrong path. But how do we prevent? How do you prevent hatred? How do you prevent any kind of disharmony in the society? Very simple. Get to know each other. Be in the communication. And this is what our rabbis do. And this is what I try to do. And I have to say, this is really fascinating, really great. And this really opens doors, builds bridges with the society. And I'm sure that you encounter this here in the United States as well. Unfortunately, our societies are very, very divided. Our way out of it is to talk to each other, to build these bridges. Our rabbis do this excellently, and we feel very much welcome in the German military. And obviously, there's a beautiful German expression. There is still room up high. That means there's room to improve.
Say it in German first.
Es gibt Luft nach oben. There's still air above you. That means there's still room to improve. And otherwise, what would you do? We need to improve. But I really believe that we got on a right foot, and with the help of the Almighty, we're going to just get higher and higher. And I have to say, I feel so well here in the Aleph Institute, here in Florida, not just because of the excellent weather, but the program, the connectedness, the network, to see these wonderful chaplains from all over the United States, but also to see the cadets of West Point and the young lay leaders is just inspiring. And when you come in a Shabbat in a synagogue and you see over 100 people praying in uniform, it's just giving you the chills. And I hope that this atmosphere is something that we can also take with us. Again, Germany is culturally very, very different. The way the German society looks at uniform. We have a different history.
One could understand. Yeah.
That's right. It's okay.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have to find the right balance. Not to be overly proud, at the same time have a very deep appreciation. Yeah, it's you call in physics the oscillation. In the beginning, you have a big amplitude, and then some it comes down to. So now we're still in the beginning when these amplitudes are quite big.
A correction.
That's right. The correction is slightly, slowly but surely. Rome wasn't built in a day. Listen, I'm 3 years in the role, not yet completely 3 years. I tell people, right now, most of the time that I work, most of my time is actually with non-Jewish soldiers. Let's say 95% of my time. But hopefully my successor will have just 90% of his time with the non-Jewish soldiers and then more time for even more Jewish soldiers. And his successor will have 85. And in a few generations. and then down the road we come to a certain equilibrium, but maybe probably around 65 to 35, which is I really think it's a very, very good balance for a veteran military rabbi. But that's the point. That's the point. We go step by step and slowly but surely build up this institution, this military rabbinate, and we are there for the German soldiers, no matter where they are, and through that, again, it's also very, very nice to be part of the NATO, and this is also, again, what I said, Landesverteidigung, Bundesverteidigung, the protection of the land and the protection of our allies. That means we care for each other, no matter where you are. We, as German chaplains, we care for our NATO.
If I'm getting this correct, that was a long-winded way of basically saying we have 5 open positions. If you like beer and think you can turn Yiddish into German, come make an impact.
Go for it, yes. You need to be a German citizen as well. Right. We're going to work on that.
Okay. You talk about the anti-Semitism aspect that could occur when dealing with more conservative or far right-wing and so on and so forth, which obviously in Germany we won't veer away from it. There will be some people that have their family ties and have their youth still to an extent at that sphere, or maybe you can completely correct me.
I do not have the feeling that I think we passed those days. I think the historical distance is big enough regarding that. I think much more actually the same ideology that is impacting the German society is that you experience here in the United States, where at least sounds or voices of illiberal democracies are rising. That is for me troubling, to be very honest, because I really believe that we religious Jews strive in liberal democracies that gives us the freedom to practice our religion. Again, unfortunately, these balance to find this balance is very, very hard. I'm not a politician. I'm not a historian, and I just had tried to build my own opinion on the matter. But generally, there's a zeitgeist. So I really believe that religious leaders today, not just in the military, but outside the military, they really have to make a point. What are the core values that we stand for? What are the ethical imperatives that guide us to be normal and to really build a society where all of us can exist without a fear of our identity, without the fear of to lose our identities, the fear of losing our religion or our rights just because you do not fit into a certain box. I do not know where it is heading to. I really wish I knew, but I'm not a Navi, I'm not a prophet. So let's just hope for the best.
Let me go on to a little bit of a different topic, if that's okay. I'd like to find out and understand if there's any time that you've spoken to Jewish soldiers in the German military and asked them what their reasons are for serving Germany with the knowledge of potentially their parents, grandparents, so on and so forth, having gone through the Holocaust.
So I think that the reason is the same, that if somebody understands that history develops, let me put it this way, have you ever seen somebody who doesn't want to visit Rome? Probably still the descendants of those people who persecuted the Jewish people 2,000 years ago are still there. You reach a certain historical distance where you realize that things have changed. Again, it doesn't mean that you ignore the past, but this is, I really believe, based on one of my rabbis, Rabbi J.J. Schechter from New York, is probably really the idea is that the word zachor, to remember in Judaism, means that you set it in front of your eyes. It doesn't mean that you actually, historical remembers doesn't mean that you remember. It means that you set it in front of your eyes to keep it in mind, not to do the failures of the past. So Germany does
learn and grow.
That's right. And in Germany, this happens a lot. That in a political level, the constant remembrances. This is also, by the way, sometimes I told you that this the idea of oscillation, this could also happen when the problem is when you overdo, then people become resistant to it. So what is the method of remembering without letting yourself be paralyzed? Mm-hmm. So remember not to do the mistakes of the past, but you're able to still continue, go and proceed forward. So I really believe that Germany is on the right path. Unfortunately, this is a very not just delicate, but it's an unstable balance that you have to always poke it back to the middle that is going to stay there. But I really believe that most of the soldiers who serve, they see, yes, it's a delicate balance, but we see that this military is standing currently on the right side of history, and we want to do our best. And if something goes against, then we have to raise our voices. This is the way it goes. So, therefore, the young soldiers who are now currently serving, and sometimes not just the young soldiers, we have retired lieutenant colonels who are really excellent people. We have people in active duty in the sanitary services. We have people who are mechanics at the Air Force. And they really believe that this is a good cause. This is my father, of blessed memory, was a lieutenant colonel for the artillery. He was a chief of staff in a smaller army base not far from Budapest. So I still remember very, very fondly. And people say this is not just a good path in life. It's some sort of stability, a sense of purpose. Why not? Why should the German military be different? Yes, we have history, but each year in July at the rebel at the Valkyrie, remember, of Graf von Stauffenberg against Hitler. This is the day when most of the soldiers take their vow. This is the day to show this is, and again, I think it's really in that regard.
Can you give a little bit of context to who he was?
Yes, so Graf Stauffenberg was a colonel in the army. He fought in the Desert Storm. He lost his eyesight. He was a sympathizer of the Nazi regime, but at some point, he had a moral conscience goal, was that it's not, you can always argue why so late. But at that point, he was ready to stand up and try to assassinate Hitler. This is the famous Valkyrie. So the next day, in the Bender block, which is today the Ministry of Defense in Berlin, he was executed along with other people who were trying to organize. That's right. Who tried to organize the military resistance, because there's a point comes when people understand this is going the wrong way. Could have been done earlier, yes, but still, it's very important that the military says this is our role model in the sense of you have to have your moral conscience, and therefore, the day when the new recruits take their vows is the day of the execution of Graf von Stauffenberg.
And I guess that also has that Jewish idea of it's never too late to change.
I totally agree with you, and it sets a good course. We have to take history always with a cup of water. So again, you have to analyze, but still, you learn from the past, and do not let yourself paralyzed. You take role models. There were people who were role models who you can take. Just to give you an example, I felt very honored this past May when the inspector of the sanitary services, General Baumgartner, a three-star general who's the sanitary services is one branch in the German army. Okay. They have their base in the city of Koblenz. Koblenz is where the Main and the Moser River flow together. That's what the Latin name comes from, Combulentia.
Okay.
The name of the place is Koblenz. And this is where their main base is. And they decided to give to each street and square within the base a name. of those soldiers who were part of the sanitary services and fell throughout even Afghanistan, staff sergeants. Not you don't have to go for high. However, the main square was named after Dr. Käthe Neumark. Who was Dr. Käthe Neumark? Dr. Käthe Neumark was the first woman as a sanitary officer, a doctor, a Jewish doctor from Halle in First World War. She was the first ever doctor woman as an officer. And they asked me to be there to commemorate that really wonderful woman. This was the first time I saw her name, and then you dig into what she's been doing, Lazaret and Halle, and then how she had to flee in the 30s Germany, from Frankfurt, being actually one of the first real official pediatrician or school doctor in the 20s. And then she passed away before the war. She was not, but in Amsterdam, because she was basically chased away by the Nazi ideology. So I find it remarkable that the Inspector General Baumgartner decided that she is going to be the one who's going to carry the name of the main training place of the sanitary services. The German army does everything in its power to set a course of who are our role models, who are the people who we want to be associated with.
In many militaries or many societies, history of the nation is a way that people perceive what their nation represents. Right. What you're saying is basically that Germany doesn't look at the story or the history as what we want to be, but rather tries to find through the history the right people and the right personalities to emulate.
That's right, and I really think this is the way where we're heading to. I do not know, but this is the time when you need to set who are your role models. Who do you want to resemble to? Who would you like to have on your flag? Who would you like to be named after? You know, in Judaism, we put a lot of emphasis. As a child is named after one of the grandparents, or the great in the Sephardi, or a great personality, or somebody who a predecessor who was an outstanding personality. This is the way we want to be associated. We want to be, just as you said, we want to emulate these positive character traits. So you have to set your role models.
So after October 7th, did you see in the German military any of those personalities or any of those people that you could say, one day I hope the future Germany looks at those people as an inspiration?
Well, I definitely have to say that the general staff, the Inspector General and the Inspector of the Luftwaffe, they definitely set positive role models. The way they deal with, I mentioned already the story of General Gerhartz, who went to Israel to show his solidarity. The Inspector General and basically the ministry, everybody, the Secretary, the Minister of Defense, they make a very, very clear statement. We know where we're standing on this issue. And it's very, very clear. Israel is fighting a defense war against Hamas. Everybody emphasizes that please do in your power what you can to minimize the collateral damage and the people, the civilian casualties. But again, this is unfortunately certain wars are very asymmetric. I definitely have to say that the soldiers and the general staff, they know where their heart is and they have a very, very clear picture. I did not see any difference in the communication of the Bundeswehr in the past month, since the 7th of October, and their behavior towards Israel. And if there's a part of the society that has not been so much influenced by that event was military. Why? Because I really believe that most of the people who learn a little bit military ethics, they understand the situation. For them, it's not a neuroscience or rocket science to find out who is standing where in this conflict.
Battle.
Yeah, and therefore, yeah, this is what we would do if somebody would do the same thing in Germany. I mean, this is the way at least I feel towards the.
That makes sense.
Towards the military personnel in Germany, I did not feel any difference in their connection to us or in their voice towards us. The security concerns are always there. That maybe if we're making a certain event now, maybe there's a necessity for bigger security measures. Well, this is unfortunately the sad
and that's
reality.
A global thing. That's not.
Yes, this is a global thing. That has nothing to do with Germany.
I mean, I live in New York. Basically, from what you've been describing, is that Germany has a new perception and a new way of life, and the mistakes of the past shouldn't be the perception of Germany today. To a lot of Jews in around the world, especially Australian Jews, Australia was very much built off a post-Holocaust community.
Yes.
Most of us, I grew up with people who had numbers on their arms to the left and right of me at shul. My grandmother, Holocaust survivor. It's a way that we lived, and in that way of life, obviously there's a great understanding of what occurred, as well as a feeling of not to buy German cars, or not to specifically cars is tends to be the big one, but watches or Hugo Boss cologne or stuff like that. What would you say to that perspective toward Jewry that still feel that way?
Well, I have number one. I would never argue with a survivor.
100%. Yes.
To
be frank, I'm asking this from a personal level because if I'm going to be honest,
on a personal level is
no. I mean, like me personally, if I'm going to be completely open with you, me personally, my grandmother, I feel would be broken if I came home with a Porsche. Not that I can afford it, but
one day. No, but
so I really am intrigued to know your thoughts.
So my answer to that is as follows: my mother, she was born in 1942 in Budapest. That means she's a survivor herself.
Of course.
Okay. Her first ever memory that a Russian soldier comes and liberating and to the home where she and my grandmother had Swedish diplomatic protection from Rabbi Balla. Maybe the name is known to you. And my grandfather was just hiding in the attics in Budapest. Good friends were hiding him. And my mother, who was a survivor herself, and all the rest of the family is proud of what I'm doing because they think, and based on their experiences with visiting me in Germany and seeing the development of the Jewish community in Germany today, and how politics today, the German government stands very, very clearly on the side of Israel. At least, there are some ambiguous UN nation votes, which is all over, unfortunately, the globe. But at least they are not for it. They just hold themselves back. Still, my mother says you should be part of that. That's one thing. The other thing is this is coming from somebody who was born in Hungary. In 2016, the Hungarian government tried to enact, and they did, a monument for a memory of the Second World War. So the monument is that the Archangel Gabriel is attacked by the evil eagle. The metaphor is very clear. Here we have Hungary, who's been taken over by the evil German eagle. And this is when my great aunts, my grandfather's sister-in-law, she said, she was in Auschwitz, I have not heard a German word until we reached the camps. I was not deported by Germans. Those who took me away were Hungarians. And this is really the case, and you have to understand that in Europe there is a wave of different countries trying to distort the past, that they had nothing to do with that. This is something that we experience. Again, I just gave you the example of Hungary, but you could say about certain laws in Poland and Lithuania. The truth to be told, it is true that an orchestra does not work without a conductor. But also, if people don't play the violin, it will not work. So the truth is, this is also, by the way, whenever I have to say memorial prayer for the victims of the Shoah, I always say, instead of the word Germans, I use the word Nazis and their allies from all nations, because they were the perpetrators. Big problem of those who are bystanders, who did not raise their voices. It's absolutely true. They carry the burden, but the people who orchestrated and did these things, they were not just Germans or German. This is a perspective of my family on the matter.
That perspective is most definitely the perspective of, I think, most survivors, or most people that have been around survivors, because my family were, I can list off Poland, Austria, Switzerland. Switzerland, they had to leave for other reasons, but they all survivors say that same idea of, it wasn't just the Germans, and there was sometimes pride almost in collaboration. There was Polish pride in collaborating with this idea. So
I have also another argument. If you buy a Porsche and the company has to pay taxes, from that taxes, a big chunk goes to the claims conference. And the claims conference is supporting big numbers Israel. So from unlike you were to buy, I don't know, Japanese or Korean car, nothing ever, that money will come back to
better be get a Chicago.
But it's more than that. It's symbolic. It's to understanding that actually through that, because these companies and the German government, up until today, understands its historical responsibility.
There's also, to an extent, though, that feeling of, by buying, for example, a Volkswagen, which is, Hitler designed the car, you're allowing that legacy and that brand to live on. And there's a feeling of not wanting that brand to live on. So would you have any perspective on that?
I say the same thing. We should try to adopt the Torah perspective on these matters, and this is where I'm reminded of the Midrash. The Midrash says that when Abraham has to send his son Ishmael away, and he's about to die, the angels and God is about to save the boy. The angels say, well, but there will be descendants who will afflict the Jewish nation. And this is, the Torah says, no, I save him because ba'asher husham, the way he is right now. There is a historical legacy, but try your best, and there's a historical future, which we have no idea about. You try to pass your judgment based on the here and the now, and what is going on right now. This is, I generally believe, is a very important tool for life. So, again, if a survivor tells me this, would never argue for a second, because I have no idea what they went through. I do not know what their experiences were, and this is not my thing to judge. If you were asking me, I'd tell you, Ba'asher Husham, the way it is right now. And the way it is right now is, I see that we need our cooperation. We need to be part of it. You want to avoid something worse in the future, and no matter, be part of the system. To shout from the outside doesn't help. If you're part of the system, it says, I want to play along, because right now I know you do your best to trying to do the right thing. I have to play along. I have to be part of the system. And if the system fails you in this way, then it's absolutely right decision to leave the system and maybe to leave that country. But as long as there's something that we have to be doing, something that is right, and this is right now the way it is supposed to be done, we should do our best.
The question, the other line I was going to mention was really that Menachem Begun's response to the reparations from Germany, and that's why all the buses and Mercedes in Israel, and him saying that it's, and I'll be as open with it, that it's blood money. Your perspective to what I'm understanding is that what occurred. We should appreciate and look at what's occurring now, and say that we need to capitalize on and support.
What do you mean capitalize? But again, the point is, again.
Well, what's your perspective on that line of Menachem Begun?
I really believe that where Menachem Begun was in the 60s and the 70s, or fighting for the independence in the 40s, his ways, it is something that I cannot judge in any ways. Again, he himself is a survivor. He himself is somebody who leaves Russia, the Soviet the Soviet times, and he himself is fighting the Nazis. Menachem Begun is an inspiration for me. The more I read about his life lately, do I subscribe to his views? Again, I think what he said, when he said it, there's nothing I could argue with, even if I do not share this. The world is blood money, and don't misunderstand, but you have also in your pocket a cell phone, right? Do you understand that for that cell phone, how many people tried to commit suicide in a human slave factory in China? How many people died for the lithium and the cobalt, whatever, in Mali? The world has become unbearably complex. Unbearably complex. You cannot ignore this. But you have to set your limitations. What can you do about it? You should try to do your best to make sure that whatever you have is fair trade. But again, if you choose this path, then be consequent.
That I think brings on a very interesting idea that I've never put together before, which is really that for us, and and I say us because I'm talking about many people who are the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. We've always had that perspective of purchasing German for our own personal connection to it, but not necessarily looking at the objective gravitas of what's occurring now with, like you're referring to, the phones and relatives and so on and so forth, and saying that your idea of look at the now and look at the present is the most important, because what's occurring today and who the people are today at the office is really what you're supporting by purchasing those.
I really believe
that. So I really believe. Really appreciate. I know that was a pretty hard hitting side of the conversation, but I really appreciate your perspective.
No, of course. The conversation should be open. All these questions should be addressed.
Well, let me ask another idea that I'm extraordinarily intrigued to understand. The German military, of course, looks at the Nazi era of its iteration as a very negative time and doesn't harbor on it. However, prior to that time, there were some great achievements. The Otto von Bismarck era, the Frederick the Great, so on and so forth. That Prussian perspective. How much does the German military try to hold some of those ideals of 150 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, into their teachings today?
So there is a definition in the German army books, what you call tradition. And tradition are usually things that have are positive values and positive things that to adopt today from the past, which I really think there's no problem to it. I feel, again, as I say, always the winners write the narrative, but that's why people usually nowadays, especially in Eastern Europe, do not put a difference enough between the First World War and Second World War. They always think that Germans are the bad guys, but it's a totally different setup. The whole First World War era is a complete different ballgame about the empires are clashing. They reach their point of tension where they have, again, is it terrible? Yes, absolutely. And I've no justification.
We could make this 3 hours.
Yes. Absolutely, again, and I'm not a historian, I'm afraid. I do, as long as these values from the Prussian era and the Bismarck era are something that inspire you right now to do the right thing at this moment, the question is why not? As long as you find something that is absolutely okay and fits into your ethical and moral value system that is, again, now somewhat objectively moral nowadays. That means you're on the right side of history. I think it's absolutely okay. This is also like how many people want to see the military rabbinate as a kind of a continuation of the Feldrabbiner from First World War. Obviously, it was a very, very different
Can you
setup.
describe that first?
Yes, so the Feldrabbiner were the Jewish chaplains during the First World War. Over 40 rabbis serving close to 100,000 Jewish soldiers, or even more, 120. I wish I'm not so, again, I'm not a historian.
A large number.
Yes, definitely over their percentage in the society. And up until today, the victims of the First World War, I mean, let's be honest, very often in Germany and in Hungary and in Austria, they saw the war against Russia as that they stand up for their brethren who are suffering under the Tsar's pogroms. And that was seemed to be the right thing to do. Again, there's so many things that we cannot judge from that historical distance. And this is why we, up until today, remember the fallen Jewish soldiers of the First World War. And that includes also the remembrance of the rabbis who served in their capacity as chaplains in this era. There are pictures of the Kaiser und König in the Austro-Hungarian army, where an imam, a rabbi, and a Christian chaplain are standing next to each other. These are values. These are positive values that we have to take with us, even though, again, the situation is different. I'm not a wartime chaplain like Rabbi Yosef Karlbach used to be, or like Rabbi Leo Beck. I'm not their continuation, but the idea is that, again, we carry the burden of a greater society. This is, I really believe that it's partially, it's an imperative for a Jewish person, no matter where he or she lives, to be part, to be carrying this societal burden together. And this is why we have to be part of the military. And as just to reiterate, not blind patriotism. No blind patriotism, just healthy hakar tatov, healthy recognition what the society does for you, and therefore to be part of the system, and being able to raise your voice if the system is corrupting its values. I really believe that this is what chaplaincy is about.
I think when it comes to World War I, it's definitely a complex situation. I obviously, as an Australian, have probably a bit of a different perspective to you on Kaiser Wilhelm's reasonings and how that war all began.
Of course.
And that's why I kind of wanted to touch upon Bismarck and that era, because that was such a groundbreaking time for global systems, and Prussia in many ways led the world in what they did. And I wanted to understand how much the Germans of today are proud of that era, or they also look at that, they just look at the past in general as a...
I think it's very tricky. I think Germans try to be proud of the post-Second World War era. Right. Because just, again, very often this era of nationalism, again, not in a bad way, but in the middle of the 19th century, the era of nationalism, right. Which had, again, it's not a negative thing, but it could be very easily misused. People understand that this is a little bit of a slippery slope. So therefore, the German identity is much more about how they managed to rebuild after World War II, with all the help and everything, but they managed to create within 80 years a normal society, which is, I think, if you just take a look at other armed conflicts and other conflicts in the world, it's more than remarkable.
Yeah, I think that actually is an interesting idea, trying to evade the nationalism, because I'm talking about that era with a very positive perspective, but at the end of the day,
it could be misused.
Yeah, and there was a point in the 1890s where anti-Semitism was at a very high perspective, and Frederick II, I believe, came to a synagogue to try to buck that idea and buck that trend in many ways. So that, I guess, comes back to not looking at the idea and the flow of where things were, but rather the people and their personalities, trying to get the best character traits out of them.
Right. And you have to know that, unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate that very few youngsters get acquainted with the nuances of history, and to be able to have that historical perspective of how history developed, how it brought us today to this point. I think history education should definitely be getting more attention in our societies, but it has to be done in a way that it doesn't paralyze us.
Right. So understanding history so that you can learn how to best tackle today.
I like this very much, the imperative in the Torah and the fifth book of Moses at the very end, when just before Moses blesses the Jewish people, there's a song, Ha'azinu, and there is a sentence there, Zechor Yemot Olam, remember or set in front of your perspective always the days of old, the days of the world, Binu Shenot Dol Vadol, and to understand the years of the generations. Now, what does it mean, year? The word Shenot could be also interpreted in the word Shinui. Understand the differences. Understand why certain ideas and ideologies strove in certain times, certain period of times. Have an understanding, have an overarching view of the past. Go try to see what happened in the past and try to understand how could you take out the good and implement it in today's society without bringing all the bad with it. I think this is, understand why we today in 2024 are different than 1890.
Yeah, fair enough. Are there any ideas or perspectives that I haven't quite touched upon that you'd like to...
covered quite much, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Is there any final words or remarks that you'd like to say while the camera's here?
So I really just wish the Aleph Institute for his remarkable work, and Rabbi Shalom Lipskar is the founder, and Rabbi Aaron Lipskar, they're visionaries in what they do. This environment, and Rabbi Estrin, the endorser, Rabbi Dresden as the main endorser, Rabbi Katz, Mrs. Rachel Katz, they do an excellent work, and I feel privileged to be affiliated with Aleph, and thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do here, and I hope I'm going to get a copy of this conversation.
Most definitely. Well, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for your openness, and thank you for your insight. It really, really was incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much for the interview. Will this go on a real podcast?
Yeah. So